Okay, so let's just jump right into this. What if you could get limitless, totally uninterrupted, clean energy beamed directly from space? It sounds like something straight out of science fiction, right? Well, the idea is actually almost 60 years old, and for some really compelling reasons, it is making a serious comeback. So, the original concept, way back in the 1970s, was ambitious, doesn't even cover it. Picture this: a massive rectangle of glass and silicon just floating in geostationary orbit. That means it stays parked over one single spot on Earth, like a man made star. This wasn't just some satellite, it was supposed to be a technological marvel that would solve our energy problems forever. And the scale, I mean, it is just hard to wrap your head around. The proposed satellite would weigh in at 50,000 tons. To put that in perspective, that is heavier than the Titanic, and you'd have to build the whole thing up in orbit. Its size was just as bonkers. We're talking 10 kilometers long and 5 kilometers wide. Just the skeleton of this thing would have been a network of trusses, and each one of those would be the size of an apartment building. This was no ordinary satellite. But the payoff for all this? Ugh, it was huge. A single one of these platforms could generate 8.5 gigawatts of power. That's the equivalent of 8 nuclear reactors, enough to power 5 cities the size of Boston 24/7 with zero emissions. So, with a promise like that, you have to ask, why isn't our sky filled with these things right now? Well, the tough reality is that for most of its life, the idea of building this behemoth was considered, and this is a quote, beyond insane. It was this incredible dream born out of a crisis that pretty quickly crashed right back down to Earth. You know, the whole history of this idea is tied directly to the price of oil. It was born from the pure desperation of the 1970s oil shocks. The big hope was that the new space shuttle program would make it affordable to build, but the shuttle turned out to be incredibly expensive. Then in the 80s, cheap oil came back, and the motivation for this gigantic project just, poof, vanished. But the real nail in the coffin? The launch cost. The space shuttle was supposed to be our affordable truck to orbit, but it ended up costing over $54,000 per kilogram. So getting all the parts for just one of these solar satellites into orbit would have cost over $5 trillion just in launches. So that brings us to today. Why on earth are we talking about this again? Well, because today's world is starting to look eerily similar to the 1970s. We've got geopolitical pressures, all these worries about energy independence, and, of course, a global climate crisis that's pushing us hard to find new sources of clean energy. And here's the thing, the game has totally changed. This is not your grandfather's space solar plan. A modern concept like Cassiopeia is just fundamentally different. Thanks to these hyper-efficient solar panels and robotic assembly, it's way, way lighter. But the biggest game changer? The cost to get to space has absolutely plummeted, thanks to companies like SpaceX. We're talking about a price tag that's dropped from trillions to a few billion. Now, that's still a ton of money, yeah, but it's not science fiction money anymore. But some of the new concepts get even more radical. Instead of building one giant structure, imagine a whole swarm of smaller, independent satellites. Each one generates its own power, and instead of beaming it down with a giant microwave antenna, it uses a tiny, focused infrared laser. Now, syncing this way has some massive upsides. You can start small with just one satellite and then just grow the swarm over time. If launch costs get low enough, a 1 gigawatt swarm could cost just $1 billion. That's actually competitive with a brand new fossil fuel plant. The catch is, well, lasers can't punch through thick clouds, and you've got the whole PR problem of convincing people that space lasers are a good thing. But there's an even simpler, more direct approach being worked on. What if you just skipped converting sunlight to electricity in space altogether? There's a company called Reflect Orbital that's trying to do exactly that by using these giant, ultra-lightweight mirrors to reflect sunlight directly onto solar farms that are already here on Earth. The whole idea is pure economics. Like their chief engineer, Charlie Garcia, says, you're not trying to replace the sun, you're just trying to extend it. You sell sunlight during those peak demand hours, right at dawn and dusk. When renewable power is getting scarce, prices are super high, and we usually have to fire up expensive, dirty fossil fuel plants to meet the demand. Okay, but how do you steer a giant, kind of flimsy mirror in space with no fuel? It's a crazy engineering problem. They use these internal reaction wheels to aim it, but those wheels build up momentum. So to get rid of that momentum, they use this amazing combination of tricks. They actually push against the Earth's magnetic field. And get this, they even use the faint wisps of the upper atmosphere to steer. kind of like a sailboat tacking against the wind. And the material science behind it is completely counterintuitive. You'd think you'd want the absolute strongest material possible for the mirror, right? But because the mirror has to be stretched perfectly flat to work, a stretchier, weaker material actually needs less force to pull it taut. And that means the support structure can be lighter, which makes the whole satellite cheaper to launch. It's a totally mind-blowing trade-off. So we have these incredible, really innovative ideas that are feeling less and less like science fiction every day. But they bring up a major dilemma. This technology doesn't just promise a brighter future in terms of energy, it promises a literally brighter night sky. And that comes with a real cost. So each one of these satellite mirrors would appear in the sky about twice as bright as a full moon. But here's the thing. To actually power a solar farm, you don't just need one. You need a whole constellation of them. The combined effect would be a significant new source of light pollution, creating this faint, constant glow all across the night sky. And that really gets to the heart of the trade-off, doesn't it? We have a technology here that could give us clean, on-demand power anywhere in the world, which would be huge for fighting climate change. But the price could be the darkness of our night sky, which would impact everything from astronomy to entire nocturnal ecosystems. So, in the end, that 60-year-old dream of getting power from space, it's no longer a question of if. It's really about how and when. The technology's getting there, the economics are starting to make sense. The only question left is which version of this future we choose to build, and what we're willing to trade in the process.